Dear brothers and sisters, there is a quiet voice within each of us that is often drowned out by the noise of the world. It is a gentle voice, not harsh, not demanding. It does not shout. It waits for silence to be heard. This voice calls us inward. It invites us not to flee the world, but to go deeper into who we truly are, to listen, to reflect, to be honest with ourselves. But how difficult this is in a time when everyone wants to be seen, when everyone wants to speak, when the world teaches us that to be visible is to be valuable. And yet, what is truly valuable rarely makes a sound. The roots of a tree grow in silence. The sun rises without applause. The heart beats without ever seeking attention. So too, the soul thrives not in the spotlight, but in stillness, in that sacred space where we are alone with God, alone with our conscience, alone with our truth. To focus on yourself is not selfishness. It is responsibility. It is recognizing that before we can love others, before we can serve, before we can build or lead or correct or teach, we must be whole inside. We must know who we are. And to know who we are, we must sometimes be silent. Silence is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of something greater. It is the space where truth comes forth, not crafted by our cleverness, but revealed by grace. And to focus on yourself in silence is to stand before the mirror of your soul, not to admire yourself, but to be transformed. We spend so much of our lives comparing, competing, complaining. We scroll endlessly through the lives of others. We speak even before we think. We react before we reflect. And slowly, without realizing it, we forget how to listen not just to others, but to ourselves and to God. But silence teaches us. It purifies the mind. It calms the heart. In silence, we begin to see what is truly important and what is just noise. We begin to recognize that not every battle requires our voice. Not every opinion needs to be shared. Not every moment must be filled with words. There is great strength in restraint. There is wisdom in waiting. There is clarity in quiet. Focusing on yourself is not about closing your heart. It is about opening it in the right direction. We live in a time of distraction, distraction disguised as connection, urgency that mimics purpose, speech that poses as wisdom. But true connection begins when we are rooted in our own being, when we have made peace with our own imperfections, when we are not desperate to prove ourselves to the world. We are not called to be echoes of the noise around us. We are called to be instruments of peace, carriers of light, vessels of mercy, but that only happens when we allow ourselves to be emptied of pride, of anger, of judgment, and this emptying often begins in silence. Some of the most profound moments in history were born not in crowds, but in deserts, not in speeches, but in solitude. Great souls are shaped in silence. Saints are formed in stillness, and the strongest voices are often those that first learned to listen. There is a beauty in watching someone who is not in a hurry to speak, who listens, who observes, who reflects. Such people have depth, not because they are quiet, but because they have gone deep within themselves. They have met their fears. They have made peace with their wounds. They have heard their conscience speak, and they have not looked away. To focus on yourself is to cultivate your inner garden, so that when the storms of life come, and they will, you are not shaken. You are not thrown by the opinions of others, by the chaos of the world, because you have roots, deep ones, and those roots were formed in silence. Sometimes we are so eager to correct others, to fix the world, to express our frustration, to voice our truth. But let us ask, have we corrected ourselves? Have we faced our own contradictions? Have we looked within and allowed grace to soften the hard parts of our hearts? The one who is truly strong does not boast. The one who is truly wise does not shout. The one who truly loves does not need to be seen doing so. There is a difference between visibility and virtue. The world rewards the first. Heaven rewards the second. We live in a culture that is so afraid of silence that we fill every moment with noise music, messages, media. But ask yourself, when was the last time you sat with yourself, not to judge, not to criticize, but simply to be? When was the last time you let your soul breathe? This is not a call to isolation. It is a call to recollection. It is not a rejection of the world, but a deeper engagement with it, one that begins from a place of integrity and peace. Before you try to change the world, change the way you speak to yourself. Before you try to make your voice heard, listen to the voice within. Before you criticize another, examine your own heart. And when you do speak, let it come from a place not of anger or pride, but of clarity and love. Silence is not weakness. Silence is the womb of wisdom. From it comes clarity, compassion, courage. The person who has mastered the art of silence is not passive. They are simply aligned with a deeper truth. Even in prayer, sometimes we speak too much. We come with our lists, our needs, our worries. But God does not need our noise. He desires our attention. He wants us to be present. And in the quiet, he speaks not in thunder, not in earthquakes, but in a still small voice. So I say this not as a command, but as an invitation. Step away from the noise. Step away from the endless need to explain, defend, prove, react. Find a quiet place in your room, in your heart, in your mind. Sit there, be still, listen, and focus. Focus not on what others think of you, not on who is ahead or behind, not on the judgments, the rumors, the applause, or the rejection. Focus on your soul. Focus on what is eternal. Focus on truth. You are not your image. You are not your words. You are not your success or failure. You are a soul, and your soul thrives in silence. May you have the courage to retreat not in fear, but in faith. May you have the strength to hold your tongue when anger rises. May you have the wisdom to know when silence speaks louder than words. And may you find in the sacred quiet the person you were always meant to be. And as we walk through life, this practice of silence and interior focus becomes not an escape, but a discipline, a way of shaping the heart to respond instead of react, to discern instead of assume, to carry peace into a restless world. We do not disappear when we become quiet. We become more present. We are no longer pulled in 10 directions. We stand in one place, firm, centered, unshaken. There is a deep need today for people who are not tossed about by every opinion, every fear, every temptation to speak before thinking. The world needs witnesses, not performers. And a true witness is formed in silence where conviction is tested and character is built. That is the place where you learn to carry light, even in dark times. Let us not mistake noise for influence. Let us not believe that our worth increases with how often we are heard. There is a danger in constantly needing to be understood, constantly needing to express every thought. The heart grows heavy under the weight of this performance, and often what we say in haste becomes what we regret in reflection. But the one who remains silent in the face of provocation, not out of fear, but out of inner strength, that one carries authority. Not the authority of position or title, but the authority of authenticity. And authenticity is always born from self-awareness and silence. There are things you will understand only after years of listening. There are truths that cannot be spoken, only lived. There are wounds that can only be healed in the quiet chamber of prayer, of contemplation, of solitude. No amount of applause can do what inner peace can do. And inner peace comes not when you master the world, but when you master your response to it. Be patient with yourself in this journey. You will fail. You will speak too soon, act out of restlessness, compare yourself, become distracted. That is human, but do not give up on silence. Return to it. Let it be your compass. Let it correct you, guide you, humble you, heal you. Not everything deserves your attention. Not everything requires your involvement. Not every fight is your fight. Wisdom is knowing when to be present and when to step back, when to speak and when to wait, when to move and when to be still. The more you focus on yourself, not in selfishness, but in spiritual responsibility, the more you realize how much of life is shaped by interior discipline. How much of our struggle comes not from the world, but from within. And once we begin to tend to that inner space with care, with honesty, with silence, the world begins to lose its power to disturb us. We begin to see people differently too, with less suspicion, less envy, less judgment. Because the silent heart is a soft heart. It does not need to shout to be heard. It does not need to be right to feel whole. It finds joy in simply being true. This focus on yourself is not isolation, it is preparation. The deeper you go within, the more fully you can go out into the world. You are no longer speaking from impulse, but from insight. You are no longer acting out of ego, but from love. You are no longer driven by fear, but grounded in faith. And you begin to see that silence is not the absence of engagement, it is a different kind of engagement. One that chooses wisdom over reaction, substance over performance, truth over popularity. In your silence, you will begin to hear the cries of others more clearly. Not just their words, but their wounds. Not just their anger, but their pain. And you will begin to speak when you do speak, not just to be heard, but to heal. To focus on yourself in silence is to sit with your history, with all the pain, all the beauty, all the questions. It is to look into your heart and not be afraid of what you find, because only in facing yourself honestly can you grow. Only in meeting your shadow can you begin to shine with a light that is not shallow or loud, but deep and enduring. This world is quick to tell us who we should be, but the quiet heart learns who it already is. The world urges us to chase more, but the still soul knows that less is often more. Fewer words, fewer attachments, fewer distractions. More depth, more peace, more presence. And even when you walk among others, even when you are surrounded by noise, your silence can remain. It becomes a place within you, like a well you can return to again and again, to draw strength, to draw peace, to draw perspective. That is the power of silence. It travels with you. It is not something you visit, but something you carry. It becomes part of your gaze, your tone, your rhythm. People feel it. They may not understand it, but they will notice. And in your quietness, others may find the courage to quiet themselves, because silence is not just for you. It is contagious. One peaceful presence can transform a room. One calm spirit can soften conflict. One quiet example can speak louder than 1,000 speeches. So do not be afraid to retreat sometimes, to turn off the noise, to close the door, to step back. You are not abandoning the world. You are becoming ready to serve it from a place of truth and depth and compassion. Let the world rush if it must. You do not have to. Let the world speak in haste. You can speak in grace. Let the world crave attention. You can crave truth. And all of this begins with a simple, radical decision to be still, to be silent, to focus, to listen, to trust that in the quiet, something deeper is unfolding, not immediately seen, not loudly praised, but eternally significant. And in that depth, you begin to sense things others may overlook. You begin to read between the lines of people's words. You begin to notice their weariness, their longing, their unspoken prayers, because the silence you cultivate inside doesn't numb you, it awakens you. It heightens your sensitivity to what matters most. This kind of attentiveness is rare. Most people are racing through life, driven by external demands, pulled in every direction. But you, if you have practiced stillness, begin to move differently. You walk slower. You listen more deeply. You look people in the eye not to judge them, but to see them. Your presence becomes a refuge, not because you are perfect, but because you have made peace with imperfection. When you focus on yourself in this way, you are no longer preoccupied with appearances. You stop asking, "What will they think of me?" and start asking, "Is this true to who I am?" You are no longer seeking validation from the crowd, but direction from within. And that shift changes everything. You begin to love more quietly but more truly. You begin to speak more rarely but more powerfully. You begin to act not to be seen but because it is right, and people may not notice right away. That's fine. Let them misunderstand you for a time. What matters is not how loudly you shine, but how consistently you burn. And the consistency only comes when you are rooted in silence, a silence that is not empty, but full of listening, full of reflection, full of grace. In that silence, you begin to remember truths the world tries to make you forget, that your worth is not earned, that your dignity is not up for debate, that your soul is not defined by success or failure. You remember that you are already loved, already held, already enough. This is why silence is so threatening to the world, because it reveals things we try to hide. It unmasks the illusion. It exposes what is false. And in that exposure, we have a choice: to cover up again with noise, or to stay and be transformed. Every time you choose silence over senseless noise, focus over distraction, presence over performance, you are sowing seeds in your soul. You may not see the harvest right away, but one day, perhaps in a moment of crisis or joy or decision, you will draw from that inner well and realize how deeply it has shaped you. You will speak with clarity when others are confused. You will remain calm when others panic. You will forgive when others seek revenge. And it will not be because you are better, it will be because you have listened long enough, waited patiently enough, gone deep enough to act from your center. And when you meet others who have done the same, you will recognize them not by their words, but by their presence. There is something unmistakable about a soul that has been quieted, that has faced itself, that no longer lives on the surface. This is what it means to be anchored, to be grounded, to be faithful in the small things, to not need to be constantly seen to know you are valuable, to not need to win every argument to feel at peace, to not need to react to every offense to know who you are. In a world addicted to speed, your stillness will seem strange. In a culture obsessed with noise, your silence may be misunderstood, but stay the course. You are not called to imitate the chaos. You are called to offer an alternative, a different way of being, a deeper kind of strength. This path will not always be easy. There will be times when silence feels like loneliness, when focusing on yourself feels like selfishness, when choosing stillness feels like missing out. But those are the moments when growth is happening, when the roots are stretching deeper, when the soul is becoming more real. Keep tending to that inner space, even when no one sees it, especially when no one sees it. That is where the most meaningful transformation takes place, in the hidden places, in the uncelebrated moments, in the quiet decisions made between you and your conscience. There is no applause in those moments, no recognition, but that is the ground where truth takes root. And the more you focus on that inner work, the less concerned you become with controlling others, proving yourself, or chasing fleeting praise. You begin to walk with an ease that does not come from having all the answers, but from being anchored in something deeper than opinion. Your peace is no longer fragile, dependent on how things go or how people treat you. It has been forged in silence, and that kind of peace endures. In a loud world, silence is countercultural. It takes courage to stop speaking. It takes humility to step back. It takes discipline to stop feeding the ego and to nourish the soul instead. And yet, that is where the real journey begins. Not with what you can show others, but with what you surrender to in the quiet of your own heart. You begin to notice that many of the things that once seemed urgent were never truly important. You begin to see that much of what is loud is also shallow, and much of what is deep is also still. You become less reactive, more reflective, less defensive, more discerning, and your life begins to align not around ambition or applause, but around integrity. That alignment doesn't happen overnight. It is a daily choice to step away from the distractions, to notice what's really going on inside, to admit what you've been avoiding, to forgive what you've been holding, to return to that center that is not moved by the winds of the world. And when others speak over one another, you wait. When others try to win attention, you let go of the need to be noticed. When others are restless, you rest in the silence that you have learned to cherish. Not because you are indifferent, but because you are grounded. Focusing on yourself in this way is not about detachment from people. It is about becoming more available to them in the right way. You don't enter conversations looking to dominate or impress. You come to serve, to understand, to bring peace. You no longer need to be the loudest in the room to feel that you belong. You know who you are, and that quiet confidence makes space for others to be seen and heard too. Even your silence becomes an act of love. It creates room for others to speak, to feel, to breathe. You are not competing. You are not correcting for the sake of ego. You are simply present, fully, without needing to control the moment. That kind of presence is healing, not because of what you say, but because of who you've become. There will always be voices that tempt you to react. There will always be noise demanding your attention. But you do not have to answer every voice. You do not have to match the volume of the world. There is greater strength in choosing not to engage when it would only feed division. There is greater wisdom in knowing when silence is more faithful than speech. In silence, the truth has time to settle. In silence, emotions soften. In silence, The deeper voice can rise, the one that speaks not from pride or fear, but from clarity and compassion. That voice is not always the first to come. It is often the last, and that is why you must wait, why you must listen, why you must learn to trust that what matters most is not always said first or loudest. Over time, this kind of focus begins to change the very way you see others. Their anger no longer threatens you, you see their pain. Their arrogance no longer irritates you, you see their insecurity. Their success no longer provokes envy, you see their humanity. And all of this deeper seeing, this clearer understanding, comes from silence. It is silence that opens the eyes of the heart. It is silence that sharpens compassion. It is silence that reveals what words cannot express. And when you do choose to speak, because there are times you must, your words will carry more weight. Not because you are louder, but because they will come from a deeper place. They will come without bitterness, without pride, without the need to win. They will come from the still place that has been shaped by listening, formed by reflection, purified by grace. So I leave you with this. Do not be afraid of silence. Do not be afraid to turn inward. In a world that rushes to speak, be the one who listens. In a world that craves attention, be the one who seeks truth. In a world that scatters itself in every direction, be the one who returns to the center quietly, faithfully, and with strength. Let your silence be your witness. Let your stillness be your power. Let your inner life be the wellspring from which all your words and actions flow. And remember this, the deepest transformations do not begin with a crowd, but with a quiet soul willing to face itself. If you can do that, you will not only change your life, you will become a light in a world that has forgotten how to see. Focus on yourself, stay silent, and let the truth within you speak louder than the noise around you. Thanks for watching.